to Charles Winford from UPenn to have a little bit of conversation about what's happening. Not sure if we're glad I'm done or
So a couple of weeks ago, in our monthly call with our sales group, we were talking about the Atmospheres Local, and I said, you know, it's great to hear from all the Aruba people, but it would also be great to hear from some local engineers. You know, we've got some people who work in the area, great ideas flowing around, but it would be great to hear from some local people along with the Aruba engineers. And then I made the statement, well, I would even be willing to do a talk. And so here I am. But I wanted to talk about something that covered multiple areas, right? And that's managing large networks with a small number of staff. Just to give everyone a little bit of an overview, at Penn we have 11 local controllers scattered throughout the campus. We have over 4,000 access points, ranging from 225s, 224s, all the way down to the 125, 124s. We have 130 plus high density spaces across campus. We have a lot of classrooms, a lot of auditoriums, things of that nature that we need to make sure that people are able to get on when conferences come in, classes and things like that. We also have a pretty robust test environment for testing code, for testing new configurations, things of that nature. And then at peak, we see about 22,000 authenticated devices on our network. That includes our primary 802.1x network, along with our guest network. And then on top of that, we see typically about 110,000 devices pass through our network every month. You know, being in an urban environment here in Philadelphia, you know, pretty much everyone walks through our campus and everyone tries to get on our guest network, so we see a lot of devices passing through. And the other thing is that at Penn, we have a distributed IT support system. Each school and center is responsible for providing their own IT support, and then is able to escalate that up into like a central IT organization if they're having more problems. And then to give you an idea of what we're working with, we have 2 full-time engineers, but we are not completely dedicated to wireless. Probably like 80% of our time is dedicated to wireless. We have 3 project managers who help with upgrades and new installations and things of that nature. And again, not all their time is dedicated to wireless. We have 4 NOC staff for handling outages and first-line support for the engineers. Of course, management. We also have for all our AP installations, we contract all that work out. We don't, as engineers, go around and install APs, so we contract all that out. And then, of course, a lot of miscellaneous engineering staff for handling DNS, DHCP, authentication, monitoring, things of that nature. So some of the areas that I wanted to touch upon is design and deployment, along with infrastructure and configuration management, support and troubleshooting, and then new technologies and looking forward. So with design and deployment, the big thing that I try to go for, and we at Penn try to go for, is making everything a non-event event. Okay, make sure everything can handle the capacity for things that are coming in, so that we don't have to worry when something happens, when a new event comes in. To give an example, classes start tomorrow. I'm here. I'm not worried about any of the problems we had over the weekend. We had, how many, 1,300 students move in over the weekend? No incident, right? I'm not worried. So we try to design for capacity, make sure we have enough DHCP, make sure we have enough radio capacity, things of that nature. We also try to work with our customers and clients very closely to make sure that we understand what they need, right? Make sure that we understand that this space is going to be used for this, and there could be this many people. Or this space is going to be used for that, and there can be this many people, right? Because if we design that way, then we don't have to keep coming in when there's problems and things of that nature, right? Freeing up time for us as engineers to do more design work and troubleshoot more challenging problems, right? And we're also working in an urban environment. You know, there's a lot of RF interference. There's a lot of neighboring APs. I'm going to poke fun at Drexel because we battle with them all the time. But that's something that has to be taken into consideration also. We also want to make it easy for people to get on the network. If you make it easy for them to get on, then you don't have to deal with them, right? We use Express Connect to onboard our users. And when we moved to Express Connect about 4 years ago, it offloaded a ton of time from our support staff on helping people get on. It was this complex set of instructions, very challenging, and then now it's just this click, 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 you're done, right? It makes it a lot easier. And then, we do a lot of AP deployments, and we're about to start our replacement of AP 125, 124, so there's a lot of work that goes into streamlining that process to make it very easy for our contractors and our NOC staff to be able to deploy new APs. We don't want to have to touch every AP. We want service to come up instantly when the new AP comes up. So through a lot of scripts and processes, we've come up with a pretty easy way to just, here's a box of APs, go install them, and you're good, right? Very little interaction from like NOC staff or engineers is needed for deployment of APs. So for infrastructure configuration management, we do use Airwave to collect user statistics, data usage, things of that nature. And it does provide an awesome back view into historical data that we can use for planning and things of that nature. But it's not the be-all, end-all. So I've also gone through and developed a lot of scripts for doing auto-provisioning of APs, tunneling through logs for user debug information, auto-provisioning of APs, things of that nature, to just make my life easier and make other engineers' life easier so we don't have to constantly have our hands in every little thing that's happening. The other thing is we also try to use very useful names for our APs. All of our APs, I can glance at the name and know which building it's in, which floor it's in, which room it's in, and more than likely which corner of the room it might be in. So having those useful names doesn't mean I have to go tunneling through a stack of maps to try to find where an AP might be or things like that. We also started with recently doing DHCP addressing for all our APs. We used to do static addressing, and we've moved to DHCP, again, to help streamline and not have to have someone having to touch every AP every time we come through. Okay. With configuration management, back in Airheads at Vegas, I gave a talk on this, but template everything. Make everything as cookie cutter as you can. Keep everything simple. Recently, last summer, I took and went through our configuration and took our configuration from 12,000 lines to 6,500 lines without any issues. And actually, some places were like, it's working better. I'm like, yes. But template everything. Keep everything cookie cutter, things of that nature, right? Standard naming conventions, like I said earlier, I like writing scripts. Having everything very standardized allows me to quickly make changes to things, know how things are configured, quickly look at the configuration and understand how things fall into line, what's paired with what. Okay? And then consolidation and configuration, right? Avoid per AP configurations, right, if you can. They are cumbersome and they introduce problems down the line. And avoid one-offs. Right? Like, again, try to keep everything as standard and as consistent as possible. Okay. So for support and troubleshooting, we aim to make support very easy for our end users. Right? It shouldn't be this complex process to try to fix a problem. Right? We also want to make sure that our frontline support people, it's very easy for them to pass trouble tickets up, get more information, things of that nature. We also try to leverage and develop around existing processes. It's much easier to insert an extra step into an existing process than trying to develop a whole new process and then have a whole group of people have to relearn it. So that's that. I'm also really big on the education of our IT staff and users. When they're aware of what's going on or how things work or why something does what it does, they're more understanding. They're easier to work with. You're not saying, no, you can't do that. Well, why? Well, you just can't do that. rather saying, well, here's why it doesn't work, and here's what we're trying to do to fix it, and be open and educate them. It makes it much easier and much more pleasant experience. In terms of troubleshooting, we've at Penn, again, trying to keep everything easy, have developed the mentality of just rerun AirPen at Help. AirPen at Help is our onboarding tool, and it does a pretty good job of fixing 80% of the problems that exist, right? Normally some configuration issues, something like that. Again, offloading time from our support staff and engineers so that they can concentrate on more, pressing issues. Like I mentioned earlier, we do have a layered troubleshooting system. So end users can go to their school or center's IT staff, and then they can escalate that up through the chain to eventually make it to an engineer. And that allows, and each time you go up, you get more and more experience and more knowledge as you go up, right? And again, we also try to provide suggestions and guidelines for troubleshooting. Providing, one of the examples is that every year the residence halls hire out students to act as like IT staff for the residence halls. And we bring those guys in every year and show them how to do basic troubleshooting, how to do collect data so that we can help them solve problems, things of that nature. And we provide them with a lot of guidelines and support on supporting end users. New technologies, these are things that we face, unfortunately. Recently I was at another conference, and someone referred to the Internet of Things as the Internet of Unpatched Kernels. And I just, that's what I refer to it now as, is the Internet of Unpatched Kernels. But we now are starting to see a lot of devices on campus that aren't necessarily associated with people. We're starting to see door locks, temperature sensors, things of that nature that need to be on the network, they need to be secure, but they're not necessarily associated with a person. And how do we design around that? We've adopted doing ETLS and certificate-based to provide that connectivity. But with that, we also want to make sure that we're not engaging our engineers every time somebody needs to get on, right? We're trying to push that onboarding process out to the end user, provide a system that they're able to use without having to engage local IT staff or engineers every time they need to do something. We also try to provide informational sheets to all of our users, like, this is what we support, this is what we're going to be supporting, this is what we don't support, right? So that our end users can go to vendors and be like, this is what I'm connecting this device to. Can you do it? Right? And so that we don't have to be engaged every time a new purchase happens and things like that. Right? And then the big thing for education is that we can't control what goes on the network. Right? I see devices from door locks, temperature sensors, robot dogs playing soccer, to all sorts of things. They're like, we need this on the network, and I'm like, okay, well, let's see what we can do. Okay. I'm also a big proponent of looking ahead, right? There's looking ahead, thinking of ways to improve the service, thinking of new technologies, how we're going to deploy it, things of that nature. Okay? I try to keep a thumb on new stuff, right? I also try to make time to mess around with new technologies and see what I can find out that might help me with the configuration, might help some end users, things of that nature. I also really enjoy having informal conversations in the street, at lunch, whatever, with our customers, find out what they're doing. We're about to deploy this new classroom system, or we're about to have this new conference or something like that, and try to keep a pulse on what's happening across campus. We also try to maintain a public wireless strategy going forward. We meet every 3 months just to check in, see where we're at, see what things might be coming down the line. And we also try to maintain a public record of that so that people on campus can see, oh, we're about to do this, or we're going to be heading towards that. I'm also a big fan of making sure I reserve some time to test and play around with new things. I like keeping my hand on what's new, seeing what I can come up with, and what might be available to help provide a better service to the campus. So some big overall themes. Plan ahead, right? The more you plan ahead, the less time you have to spend troubleshooting, debugging, adding capacity, redesigning, things of that nature. Keep things simple, avoid one-offs, keep things cookie cutter, keep things copy and paste. Automation is your friend. Like I said, I'm a big script person, so I like to make sure I can easily change, my 300 VAPs really easily. Keep in contact with your users, make sure you know what they're up to, things of that nature. And then make everything a non-event event, right? If you don't have to worry about it, then you can spend your time doing other things. So that's all I got. Thanks.